Hey everyone, this is Mr. Willette here. So first off, before we start anything, I just want to make sure everyone's doing okay. Um, I know it's kind of crazy to kind of be doing school and trying to learn at home during this pandemic, but we'll get through it. We always do. We get through all the challenges in class. We're going to get through this challenge. So don't freak out. Remain calm. Stay at home. Wash your hands, and you guys are going to be great. Just a few things due to the change of schooling. I will most likely not be in class again, just due to the whole internship thing. Uh, that being said, you can still see me here. I can be in this cool virtual video space. Um, so what this will kind of serve as is a good supplement for you guys, depending on what we decide to do going forward. You can always go and watch these videos to learn more about what we're doing, see me, hey, or whatever. And so that's kind of what I'm making this for, is so I can still demonstrate to you what we're talking about, even if we're not meeting face to face, so we can still get through these concepts. Mr. Snowburger is also posting things for you guys on material wise, so you'll have a lot of materials in terms of resources, other videos to watch, questions from the videos. Those will be very focused around what we're doing as well, but I really hope you can come and see me and do this and get through this. So enough rambling and scrambling, let's get to it. So today's lesson will be basically a review on what we've already talked about. So imperialism. We talked about that idea that what is imperialism? Imperialism is the best way to think about it. It's just spreading out, taking things that don't really belong to you. I mean, think about it. Remember we talked about in class, if you had a sledgehammer, we just smash down the wall to the next classroom. And we're like, hey, so this is ours now. How would they react? That's imperialism. And so right here you can see, if my mouse has a little halo around it, Screencast-O-Matic's fun. So you can see right there, right? That's like a picture of the United States. Remember who we said that was? It's Uncle Sam, right? Uncle Sam, the symbol of American freedom, the symbol of what America is. And Uncle Sam is literally eating Cuba. And it's kind of making fun of how we're like, yeah, we're freedom, all right. We're literally eating up other places. And so we talked about that. So remember, I asked you guys to question, where in the world do you think would have the most imperialism? Well, it'd be about right here in Africa, and we'll get to that. But if you look at this map, this idea of imperialism, the strong nations over the weaker areas. So remember, I asked you, what country on this map has the most color on it? It's clearly the United Kingdom. I mean, by far. They have Canada, half of Africa, Australia, India, New Zealand. They basically, a little part of South America over here. They're basically taking over the world. So we got Big Britain over here. Blue, that country over there in blue, that's France, right? France, the other half of Africa. So Africa is completely split in half, right? We call that the scramble for Africa. The scramble for Africa. Everyone's trying to get a piece of Africa. Why is that? Think about it. We talked about that a little bit when we had class. So why would they want Africa? Let's see. Now, before we go on to that, sorry. What does this remind you of? All these colors, right? Risk. The game Risk. Risk is a game where you basically make your friends really upset at you. Well, other than that, Risk is a game where you take over territories. Risk is basically, the board game Risk is imperialism, and that's what we're talking about. So a scramble for Africa. Why Africa? So A, it's huge. But B, why not before? So remember I told you, what was that one thing in Africa keeping people from going further? Zip. Malaria, mosquitoes. People couldn't get into the middle of Africa because there's so many mosquitoes that when they tried, they got malaria and died. So a lot of them stayed around the coast, usually enslaving people, because, yay, British Empire. But regardless, it was terrible. It was absolutely awful. But in the 1860s, that this idea of slavery is no one's doing it anymore. They're not focusing on Africa for slavery. They're focusing on Africa for all of its resources, right? So there's dense jungle in some places. Other places there's like minerals they can use, oil, and so these countries want those places for resources and land. I mean, look how big Africa is. I made a joke in class, and I was going to use music, but I decided that I've tortured you enough. Remember, it's going to take a lot to take these people away from them. They're blessing the rains down in Africa. Okay, so what's the United States policy? And I need to make sure, because this recording software only does 15 minutes, so we're going to get through it. So, what did we say the United States was even going to do about this? Were they immediately like, oh yeah, let's take over things? No, remember, Washington at first said neutrality. Let's stay out of foreign affairs, okay? In his farewell address, he's like, so, I'm leaving. Bye-bye. But before I do, can we super not take over everything? Because that puts us in a lot of wars. A lot of wars. Remember at the time, France versus Britain, they're like, hey, can you take our side? And we're like, ugh. In the 1820s, the Monroe Doctrine kind of postulates this idea that, hey, there's no more European colonizations on the Western. So Europe, stay out of the West. You stay on your side, we stay on ours, we're good. That was kind of the idea of the Monroe Doctrine. You stay on your side, we stay on ours, and we're good. And that's going to kind of put us in a tricky situation when we talk about Cuba. So isolationism. The concept we're looking at here is isolationism. These isolationists, no, we stay where we are in this little hemisphere where no one else is. We remain isolated. And that's what we follow for a really long time. That's why the United States is not shown on that map. Well, it is, but they're not in half of Africa because they have this policy. They have this, remember I said precedent in class. What's a precedent? Precedent, not president, precedent. Something that continues on and on and on, kind of like it's socially put in there. Like, if I go, remember I said if I come to school with like 50 coats, people are going to look at me weird. There's no rule saying I can't do that. It's just over time that people just think, they realize, yeah, we don't do that because that's not how things are. So we have this precedent, isolationist precedent. So the reasons, power, right? Why should we be imperialists? It's the 1890s. People want to break out of this isolationist view. They want to go out and take things. So why? Power. I mean, for sure, if you take over things, you're going to have much more power over the world, right? We said money. Remember, you're going to make tons of money from the resources you're getting, depending on where you're going. Free trade. There's no trade restrictions. They can't be like, well, we're going to put a tax on X, Y, and Z. No, because you own it, so you decide trade. Land obviously kind of goes with power. This idea that if you have more land, you're viewed as more powerful. Resources, and then this idea of spreading culture, this American culture. Most people at the time, imperialist, had this idea that, hey, we're in the Americas, and places like South America, Central America, Cuba, they don't practice American culture. It's not like us. It's not like white Anglo-Saxon American culture. Therefore, we must spread the American way to all these American areas. So there's three different things we talk about. One, military strength. Remember we talked about that in that little activity. So Alfred T. Mann, basically, we need to have lots of ships because they're cool. He liked boats, but he basically, more than just liking boats, he said we need a really strong military to compete in the world. Let's build tons of battleships because Navy, the sea might, Navy might, is super, super important at the time. And it was. I mean, the British Navy was one of the strongest in the world. I actually believe it was the strongest in the world. And so they were able to kind of take over their area because they were able to blockade things. They were able to transport tools faster, materials faster. And they just kind of intimidated everyone else with how big and strong their Navy was. And so we did that with the USS Maine and the Oregon, Olympia. This quote, basically, what he's saying is really just, we have to have a strong Navy is what that quote says. Let's have a strong Navy. So the other reason is these new markets, right? So, hey, if we have these new markets, right, we have a ton of new technology, right? People need jobs to make products. And we're in a depression. So if we have a new market and we trade, people get jobs, right? Our surplus goes away. Our economy starts to stabilize, right? And so that's why that's the other reason. Trade. And like I just kind of said before, this cultural superiority. Remember social Darwinism, that beautiful term there? Remember what Darwinism means, survival of the fittest. So if the United States um, doesn't have the power, the land, the naval might, these imperialists think, hey, we're going to be kind of taken over. People are going to take advantage of us a lot. Remember, I talked about it. It's like with your brother and sister. You don't want to just be like, oh, yeah, you can have my things. Oh, yeah, you can have my room. Because then they'll start taking advantage of you, right? Kind of the same way here is they don't want to be taken advantage of. And like I said earlier, kind of spreading democracy the American way, spread their religion, Christianity. And it is our duty to help those weaker nations, the white man's burden. Now, what did I say the white man's burden was? So it was a poem by Rudyard Kipling, and I won't go again because we're getting lower on time. And basically, it kind of just said, hey, we're going to take all of these people, right? Take all these people who are disadvantaged, and we're just going to go and use our white man's strength. And it was super racist. I mean, like, look at that cartoon is just ridiculously racist. And it's kind of this ideology of what some imperialists were thinking about when they thought of taking different places of the world. And we kind of talked about this in class. I'm just going to skim through it. But basically, this idea that, like, look at all these places. Philippines, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Cuba. And now look how perfect they are, right? Look at the Philippines is so posh. Hawaii is so posh, but they weren't. Reasons against imperialism. I didn't do that. So war. Hey, people might not like us going into their place. The other teacher might not like it if we smash down the wall and just take it all over. Hey, this is a lot of money. It costs a lot of money to do this. Also, like I said, kind of with wars, they're not going to like us by doing it. Some people, rebellions might start forming. Like, think about it. I had an example in class. If you had a teacher, let's say a teacher for, I don't know, up until the end of the semester, and then this brand new teacher kind of just comes out of nowhere, the last 2 weeks of school, it's going to be hard to control those people. It's going to be hard to control that class because you don't have that dynamic, you don't have that understanding, and you might change things that the structure had. You know, everything is in a structure, and if you change something, now everything goes out of whack. And then the ideas are just kind of, hey, we can trade without controlling. This is immoral and kind of hypocritical. Remember, we talked about the fact that the United States is a country that fought for their freedom and wanted to remain its own country, and now we're taking it from other people. Make sure that's the last one. Okay, so then William Jennings Bryan kind of comes out. Remember, we talked about him. He ran 3 times. And he's like, this is going to cause wars, like super. And a lot of people agreed and joined this anti-imperialist league. And on your notes, it's going to ask those guided notes. It'll ask you those 3. The 3 are, and I didn't go through them because of the time of the video, Mark Twain, Andrew Carnegie, and William Jennings Bryan. And these are going to be kind of those people who feel as though imperialism is not good, and we gave the reasons why in the notes. Okay, so for the next lesson, what I'll probably do is find a recorder or find a way so that we can do multiple videos so that I'm not just rushing till the end. This was kind of a review video for you guys, in case you forgot last class what we did or you weren't there and then this whole thing happened. Don't worry though, I'll try to make more of these if they're helpful. And so yeah, I will see you guys in the next lesson. I hope you enjoyed. Let's try to end this now.